The silver-blue glow of distant stars reflected off Mira's iridescent scales as she hunched over her sensor console. The young Galaxian's 6 fingers danced across the holographic controls, making minute adjustments to the detection array for what felt like the 100th time today. Her large, multifaceted eyes narrowed in concentration, their emerald hue darkening with focus as she studied the anomalous readings. "This can't be right," she muttered, tapping a command to run the diagnostic program again. The research vessel Stellar Inquiry drifted silently through the outer reaches of the Andromeda Arm, ostensibly on a routine xenorchaeological survey mission. As junior researcher, Mira had been assigned the overnight shift for the past 3 cycles, usually the quietest and least eventful time aboard the vessel. She'd been using these peaceful hours to work on her thesis about extinct civilizations and their technological remnants. Humans had always fascinated her most. Before the Great Extinction, they had been a rising power in the galactic community, innovative, adaptable, and surprisingly formidable despite their biological fragility. Then, almost overnight, they had vanished from the galactic stage. Some said they destroyed themselves in a war of their own making. Others claimed they fell victim to a plague engineered by jealous rivals. The most accepted theory was that they simply overreached their technological ambition, outpacing their wisdom. Whatever the truth, humans had passed into legend over the centuries. Their abandoned colonies had been reclaimed by other species or left as study sites for xenorchaeologists like Mira. Their technological contributions, while influential, had been improved upon and integrated into the galactic mainstream. Humans themselves were now just cautionary tales told to Galaxian hatchlings about the dangers of unchecked progress, which was why the readings on Mira's console made absolutely no sense. The diagnostic program completed its run and flashed green across her screen. No malfunctions detected. The sensors were working perfectly, yet they continued to show the impossible. A massive vessel of unmistakably human design approaching the edge of the system. Mira's heart raced beneath her chest plates. Her breathing quickened, causing her neck frills to flutter slightly. With trembling fingers, she pulled up the historical database and began cross-referencing the energy signature with known human vessel patterns. The match was undeniable. 95.8% correlation with the warships of the old Earth Defense Force. But it couldn't be. Humans were gone. Extinct. Legends. A drop of moisture fell onto her console, and Mira realized she'd been so intensely focused that her natural eye lubricants had stopped flowing properly. She blinked rapidly to correct the issue, a nervous habit from her hatchling days that she'd never quite outgrown. "Director Vex will think I've been inhaling too much stellar dust," she whispered to herself, yet she knew she needed to report this finding. The protocols for anomalous discoveries were clear, regardless of how impossible they seemed. She tapped her communication bracelet. "Director Vex," she called, trying and failing to keep her voice steady. "I've detected something that requires your immediate attention." There was a moment of silence before the gruff voice of her supervisor responded. "This had better be important, junior researcher." I was in deep meditation. Mira winced. Vex was notorious for his irritability when disturbed during his rest cycle. "I apologize for the interruption, Director, but the sensors have detected a vessel entering the system. A vessel that..." She hesitated. "That appears to be of human design." Another pause, longer this time. "Are you certain your sensors are functioning correctly?" "Yes, Director. I've run 3 diagnostic checks. The readings are consistent, and the signature matches historical records of human vessels with 95.8% certainty." "I'll be there shortly," Vex replied, his tone now sharp with alertness. "Do not contact anyone else about this. Understand?" "Yes, Director." While waiting for Vex to arrive, Mira continued monitoring the approaching ship. It moved with purpose, its trajectory suggesting it was aware of the Stellar Inquiry's presence. Yet it made no aggressive maneuvers, maintaining a steady course that would bring it within communication range in approximately 2 hours. The observation deck doors hissed open, and Director Vex strode in. The elder Zalaxian scales had faded to a deep indigo with age, and the crest atop his head had grown impressive with years of accumulated knowledge. He moved directly to Mira's station without greeting. "Show me," he demanded, leaning over her shoulder. Mira pulled up the sensor data and the historical comparisons. Vex's eyes widened as he studied the information, his breathing becoming audibly ragged. "Impossible," he muttered, pushing Mira aside to access the controls himself. "Humans are legends, cautionary tales we tell hatchlings about the dangers of technological overreach." "The data seems conclusive, Director," Mira said softly. Vex worked the controls with practiced efficiency, running his own series of tests and analyses. After several minutes, he straightened up, his neck frills fully extended in what Mira recognized as a sign of extreme agitation. "No malfunction," he confirmed, more to himself than to Mira, "and the design is unquestionably human in origin." He turned to face her directly. "Have they attempted communication?" "No, Director. They're still approaching communication range." Vex nodded slowly. "This discovery must be handled with extreme caution, Junior Researcher. The reappearance of humans, if that is indeed what we are witnessing, could significantly alter the power dynamics of the Confederation." "Should we alert the Galactic Council?" Mira asked. "Not yet." Vex's eyes narrowed. "First, we need more information. The vessel appears to be a warship, which is concerning, yet its approach is not aggressive." A soft chime from the console interrupted them. Mira glanced down and felt her heart skip. "Director, they're hailing us." Vex hesitated, then stepped back. "This is your discovery, Junior Researcher Mira. You may answer." Mira swallowed hard, feeling the weight of the moment settle on her shoulders. With a deep breath, she activated the communication array. The holographic display before them flickered to life, and both Zalaxians fell silent in shock. The face that appeared before them was unmistakably human, a species neither had ever expected to see alive. The human had olive skin and facial features that matched historical records. She wore what appeared to be a uniform with symbols of rank that Mira didn't recognize. "Greetings, Zalaxian vessel," the human said in perfect galactic standard. "This is Captain Alessandra Chen of the Earth Confederation ship Horizon. We come in peace and request permission to approach for diplomatic exchange." Mira and Vex exchanged glances of disbelief. The legends had returned, and they wanted to talk. "What do we do?" Mira whispered, her voice barely audible. Vex straightened his posture, professionalism overcoming his shock. "We follow protocol," he said quietly. Then, louder to the communication array, "This is Director Vex of the Zalaxian research vessel Stellar Inquiry. Your appearance is unexpected, Captain Chen. Humans have been absent from galactic affairs for centuries." The human's expression remained calm, but Mira thought she detected a hint of amusement in her eyes. "We've been away, Director Vex. Not extinct. And now, it seems, it is time for our return." As the implications of those words settled in the room, Mira knew that her life, and perhaps the lives of everyone in the Confederation, had just changed forever. The legends were real, and they had just made first contact. "Permission granted to approach, Captain Chen," Director Vex said formally. "We request a delegation of no more than 5 individuals for initial diplomatic contact." "Understood, Director. We will prepare a shuttle. Expect our arrival in approximately 1 standard hour." The communication ended, leaving the holographic display empty and the 2 Zalaxians staring at each other in stunned silence. "I need to notify the Council," Vex said finally. "This goes beyond our authority." "Director," Mira spoke hesitantly, "may I ask why humans would return now, after centuries of absence?" Vex's frills flattened against his neck, a sign of deep thought. "That, Junior Researcher, is precisely what concerns me. Species don't simply disappear for centuries and then return without purpose." He fixed his gaze on the approaching ship. And a warship suggests that purpose may not be entirely peaceful. But they've made no aggressive moves, Mira pointed out. Not yet, Vex replied grimly. Begin preparations for receiving their delegation. I want full security protocols in place. He turned to leave, then paused. And Mira, excellent work detecting their approach. Your attention to detail may have just given us a crucial advantage. As Vex left the observation deck, Mira returned her attention to the sensor readings, studying every detail of the human vessel. It was considerably larger than historical records suggested human ships should be, with design elements she couldn't recognize from any known database. If humans had indeed been away rather than extinct, what had they been doing all this time? And more importantly, why had they chosen now to reveal themselves? The next hour passed in a flurry of activity. Security personnel took positions throughout the ship, scientists prepared recording equipment, and diplomatic protocols were hastily reviewed. Mira found herself designated as the official xenorchaeological consultant due to her expertise in human studies, a field that had suddenly transformed from historical to contemporary relevance. As she waited in the docking bay alongside Director Vex and 3 security officers, Mira couldn't help but feel that she was standing at the threshold of a new chapter in galactic history. And somehow, improbably, she was going to be part of writing it. The airlock cycled with a hiss of equalizing pressure. Mira's breathing apparatus struggled to keep up with her quickened breath. The inner door slid open, revealing the human delegation. 5 humans stepped through, 3 female, 2 male, all wearing the same sleek uniforms with subtle differences in insignia. Captain Chen led them, immediately identifiable from the communication. She stood taller than Mira had expected, with an easy confidence that seemed neither threatening nor submissive. Director Vex, Captain Chen greeted with a slight bow. On behalf of Earth and humanity, I thank you for your welcome. Captain Chen. Vex returned the gesture. This is junior researcher Mira, who first detected your approach. Chen's dark eyes found Mira, seeming to assess her in an instant. Sharp eyes, researcher Mira. Most wouldn't have noticed us until we wanted to be seen. The implication sent a chill down Mira's spine. Had humans been watching all along? Perhaps, Director Vex said carefully, we should continue this conversation in more comfortable surroundings. We have prepared a meeting chamber suitable for both our species. Lead the way, Chen agreed. As they walked through the corridors of the Stellar Inquiry, Mira found herself alongside one of the male humans, who introduced himself as Science Officer Rivera. You study our kind, he said quietly. I read your thesis abstract while we were approaching. Fascinating perspective on human technological development. Mira's frills flared in surprise. You read my work. How did you access our academic database? Rivera smiled enigmatically. We've been monitoring galactic communications for a very long time, researcher Mira. Your work on human adaptive design principles was particularly insightful, though your conclusions about our extinction were, as you now see, somewhat premature. Before Mira could respond, they'd reached the meeting chamber. As the doors closed behind the combined delegation, she couldn't shake the feeling that humanity's return was only the beginning of revelations that would reshape everything she thought she knew about the galaxy and its history. Hidden guardians. The meeting chamber aboard the Stellar Inquiry hummed with tension. Captain Alessandra Chen sat across from Director Vex, while their respective delegations flanked them on either side. Mira found herself directly opposite Science Officer Rivera, whose calm demeanor contrasted sharply with the nervous energy radiating from the Galaxians. Let me address the question everyone is asking, Captain Chen began, her voice measured and clear. Where have humans been for the past 3 centuries? Director Vex's frills rippled slightly. That would be an excellent starting point, Captain. Chen nodded, activating a small device on her wrist. A holographic display materialized in the center of the table, showing a 3-dimensional map of the galaxy. 312 years ago, humanity detected something approaching our galaxy from intergalactic space. The hologram shifted, highlighting several points at the galaxy's edge. We called them the Void Eaters, entities that exist partially in our dimension and partially in others, consuming energy and matter across realities. The hologram showed dark, amorphous shapes moving between stars, leaving empty space behind them. "This is preposterous," one of Vex's security officers interjected. "We have monitoring stations throughout the galaxy. Nothing like this has ever been detected." Science Officer Rivera leaned forward. "Because we've been containing them. For 3 centuries, humanity has operated beyond the galactic rim, intercepting these entities before they could penetrate further inward." Mira studied the holographic display with growing unease. "You're saying humans have been fighting a war that the rest of the galaxy doesn't even know about?" "Not just fighting," Captain Chen corrected. "Winning, but at great cost." The hologram shifted again, showing human settlements on distant, uninhabitable worlds, massive orbital structures, and fleets of ships unlike any in Zalaxian records. "After the initial detection, our leaders faced a choice," Chen continued. "Alert the galactic community, potentially causing panic and certainly disrupting our preparations, or withdraw quietly to focus entirely on developing the means to combat this threat. You chose isolation," Vex stated. "We chose protection," Chen countered. "We retreated to the shadows, advancing our technology and biology specifically to fight the Void Eaters." Rivera gestured to himself. "We adapted. Human genome modification accelerated. We engineered ourselves to better pilot our ships, operate in hostile environments, and develop technologies specifically tailored to combat extra-dimensional threats." Mira noticed for the first time the subtle inhuman aspects of the human delegation. Eyes that reflected light differently, skin with a faint metallic sheen, movements too precise to be entirely natural. "You became something else," she whispered. Chen's smile was tinged with sadness. "We became what we needed to be. The price of survival." Director Vex's skepticism was evident in his posture. "This is a remarkable tale, Captain Chen, but you must understand our hesitation to accept it without verification. If what you say is true, why reveal yourselves now?" "Because the Void Eaters have evolved," Chen replied gravely. "Our containment strategies are failing. We've lost outposts, fleets, even entire colony systems in the past decade. We can no longer hold them at bay alone." The chamber fell silent as the implications settled over everyone present. "You need allies," Mira concluded. "We need the galaxy united," Chen corrected. "The Void Eaters don't discriminate between species. Every world, every civilization is just energy and matter to be consumed." Vex rose from his seat, frills fully extended in a display of authority. "This information must be presented to the Galactic Council immediately. If verified, it represents an existential threat to all sentient life." Director Vex, one of his aides, whispered urgently, "We should consult with Central Command before involving the Council. The political implications alone." "Politics," Chen interrupted, her voice hardening for the first time. "While you debate procedures, worlds are being consumed. The Outer Rim colony of Proxima Centauri fell 2 months ago. 8 billion lives extinguished in hours. A human colony," the aide pointed out. "No official Confederation world has reported any such attack." Rivera's expression darkened. "Because we've been the shield. For 3 centuries, humanity has bled so the rest of you could prosper in ignorance." The tension in the room had become almost unbearable when a sudden alarm cut through the atmosphere. Red emergency lights pulsed throughout the chamber. "Director," a voice called over the communication system. "Unidentified objects approaching at high velocity. Energy signatures unlike anything in our database." Vex turned to Chen, accusation in his eyes. "Is this your doing?" The human captain was already on her feet, her delegation moving with practiced efficiency. "They found us. The Void Eaters tracked our ship here." She tapped her wrist device. "Horizon, battle stations. Deploy defensive perimeter around the Zalaxian vessel." The ship lurched violently, throwing Mira against the wall. Stabilizers whined as they struggled to compensate. All personnel to emergency stations, Vex ordered through the ship-wide communication system. This is not a drill. Chen grabbed Mira's arm, steadying her. We need to get to the observation deck. Now. As they rushed through corridors filled with panicking crew members, Mira felt a growing sense of dread. If the humans were telling the truth, the observation deck's panoramic windows revealed a sight that would forever change Mira's understanding of the universe. The starfield was distorted, space itself seeming to fold and ripple as if viewed through heat waves. Dark shapes moved within these ripples, not ships, but entities that defied conventional geometry. Void Eaters, Chen stated grimly. Smaller scout units. The main hive isn't far behind. In the distance, the horizon maneuvered into position, its hull gleaming with activated defense systems. Energy weapons unlike any Mira had seen before lashed out, striking the distortions. Where they hit, the ripples stabilized momentarily before collapsing in on themselves. What are they? Mira asked, unable to tear her eyes away from the horrifying spectacle. We don't fully understand, Rivera admitted, joining them at the window. They exist simultaneously in multiple dimensions, feeding across all of them. Conventional weapons pass right through them. Then how do you fight them? By attacking the dimensional boundaries they exploit, Chen explained. Our weapons don't destroy them. They force them to remain in their native dimension. The stellar inquiry shuddered again as one of the entities brushed against its shields. Alarms blared throughout the ship. Shield failure in sectors 3 through 5, announced the ship's eye. Hull breach imminent. Your ship's defenses are useless against them, Chen said to Vex as he entered the observation deck. Director, you need to order an immediate evacuation. Vex's frills lay flat against his neck, a sign of grave concern. This vessel contains irreplaceable research data. We cannot abandon it. Your data won't matter if you're dead, Chen snapped. We can escort your evacuation pods to safety, but you need to move now. As the senior staff debated, Mira's attention was drawn to her personal datapad. Something about the entities tugged at her memory. She quickly accessed her research database, searching through ancient xenorchaeological findings. The progenitor tablets, she murmured, pulling up images of artifacts from a dig site she'd studied years ago. The stone tablets featured carvings that had puzzled researchers for generations, abstract patterns that seemed to depict space itself being torn apart. Captain Chen, Mira called over the chaos. These entities, they've been here before. Chen glanced at the images, her eyes widening in recognition. The ancient cycle, you have records of it. Fragments, myths from species long extinct. They spoke of devourers between stars that came in waves every 50,000 years. Rivera studied the tablet images with growing excitement. This confirms our theories. The cycle is real and documented. Another violent impact rocked the ship, throwing several officers to the floor. Hull breach in science section. The AI reported. Emergency containment activated. We're out of time, Chen declared. Director Vex, give the evacuation order. Vex hesitated only a moment longer before nodding. All personnel to evacuation pods. Priority 1 data transfer to emergency servers. As crew members rushed to their assigned evacuation stations, Mira gathered her research materials. The tablets mention a weapon, something the ancients used to drive the entities back. We found references to similar weapons in our own research, Rivera confirmed, but nothing concrete enough to build from. Mira's heart raced. My excavation site on Helios IV. There's an entire temple complex dedicated to this conflict, with technical schematics we haven't fully translated. Chen and Rivera exchanged meaningful glances. That could be the missing piece we've been searching for, Chen said. Outside, the battle intensified. The horizon deployed smaller craft that darted between the dimensional rifts, firing precisely targeted energy bursts. Some of the dark entities collapsed in on themselves, while others retreated temporarily before pressing the attack again. Even if we evacuate, the horizon can't hold them off indefinitely, Rivera warned. Not without reinforcements. Chen's expression hardened with resolve. Then we'll need to get word to the fleet and convince the Galactic Council that the threat is real. She turned to Vex. Director, your testimony will be crucial. Vex, watching his ship being torn apart by forces he barely comprehended, nodded solemnly. You will have it, Captain Chen. I have seen enough to know that this threat transcends political considerations. As they made their way to the evacuation pods, Mira found herself walking alongside Chen. You've been preparing for this your entire lives, haven't you? Mira asked. Chen's expression was unreadable. For generations, every human child is born knowing that their purpose is to stand against the darkness, to be the shield. Why? Why take on this burden alone? Someone had to, Chen replied simply, and we were the ones who saw it coming. Their evacuation pod launched moments before a massive breach tore through the observation deck. As they accelerated away from the dying research vessel, Mira watched the horizon continue its desperate defense. Human ships moved with impossible precision, their pilots demonstrating reflexes and coordination beyond natural capability. They're connected somehow, Mira observed. Your pilots, it's more than just skill. Rivera nodded. Neural interfaces, direct mind-to-ship connections. It gives us the speed and coordination we need to fight beings that exist partially outside normal space-time. The cost of such technology was written in the subtle dehumanization of the human delegation, the mechanical precision of their movements, the occasionally too perfect synchronization of their responses. You sacrificed your humanity, Mira said softly. Captain Chen's gaze remained fixed on the battle outside. We preserved our purpose. What makes us human isn't our biology, researcher Mira. It's our determination to protect life, whatever the cost to ourselves. As their pod joined others being escorted to safety by human fighter craft, Mira realized that humanity hadn't disappeared. They had transformed themselves into guardians, standing watch at the edge of darkness, while the rest of the galaxy lived in blissful ignorance. And now that darkness was pushing back. United Front. 3 weeks after the attack on the Stellar Inquiry, Mira stood before the assembled Galactic Council in the Great Chamber on Xandar Prime. Representatives from 27 spacefaring civilizations listened in stunned silence as she presented the evidence of humanity's hidden war and the approaching threat of the Void Eaters. The attack on our research vessel was not an isolated incident, she concluded, gesturing to the holographic display showing destroyed outposts along the galaxy's outer rim. In the past 20 days alone, 14 monitoring stations have gone silent. 3 colony worlds have lost all communication. The pattern of advance is consistent with Captain Chen's projections. From her position near the chamber's entrance, Captain Chen observed the proceedings with outward calm. Only Mira, who had worked closely with the human over the past weeks, could detect the tension in her posture. Chancellor Zorg of the Palaxian Dominion rose from his seat, his crystalline body reflecting the chamber's light. The Council acknowledges the evidence presented by researcher Mira. However, we must consider the possibility that humanity itself represents a threat. Their technological advancement, their biological modifications, their hidden fleets, these are not the actions of a species that wishes peaceful integration. Murmurs of agreement rippled through the assembly. With respect, Chancellor, Mira countered, if humanity wanted conquest, they would not have revealed themselves. They would have struck when we were unprepared. Perhaps this is precisely their strategy, suggested Councillor Thar of the Voxian Confederacy. Create a phantom enemy, position themselves as saviors, then assume control when we are at our most vulnerable. Captain Chen stepped forward, her patience evidently exhausted. While you debate our motives, the Void Eaters advance. We've lost 32 outposts and 18 colony worlds in 3 centuries. Billions of human lives sacrificed to keep your world safe. Her voice remained measured, but her eyes burned with intensity. Judge us if you must, But do so after we've ensured there's a galaxy left to govern. The council chamber erupted into chaotic debate. Accusations and counter-arguments flew back and forth, political alliances shifting visibly as species calculated their best interests. At that moment, the chamber's emergency alert system activated. Holographic displays throughout the room shifted to show live feeds from the outer defense perimeter of Xandar Prime. Space itself seemed to fold inward, dimensional rifts tearing open to reveal the now familiar darkness of the Void Eaters. Larger than any Mira had seen before, these entities pulsed with stolen energy, their amorphous forms occasionally revealing glimpses of consumed technology and matter. "They followed us," Chen said grimly. "Used our jump signatures to track us to the seat of government." Chancellor Zord turned to Chen, his crystalline features rigid with shock. "Your fleet is already responding," Chen confirmed, activating her wrist communicator. "All Earth Confederation vessels deploy to defensive positions around Xandar Prime. This is not a drill." Through the viewports of the council chamber, dozens of human warships appeared, dropping out of fold space with precision that bordered on the impossible. They formed a protective barrier between the approaching entities and the planet below. "We need to coordinate with your defense forces," Chen told the council. "Our weapons are effective, but we're outnumbered. With combined fleet actions, we can drive them back." For a tense moment, the council hesitated, centuries of suspicion and political calculation weighing against the immediate threat. Director Vex, who had been quietly observing, stepped forward. "I have witnessed these entities destroy a research vessel in minutes. I have seen Captain Chen and her crew risk their lives to save mine. Whatever doubts we harbor about humanity's return, this threat is real and immediate." His words broke the impasse. Chancellor Zorg gave the order. "All Confederation defense forces, coordinate with human command. Repel the invaders." What followed was a battle unlike any in recorded galactic history. Human vessels moved with impossible speed and coordination, targeting the dimensional boundaries of the Void Eaters with precisely calibrated energy weapons. Confederation ships, following human tactical guidance, provided supporting fire and defensive screens. From the council chamber, Mira watched alongside Rivera as the combined fleet engaged the enemy. The science officer provided real-time analysis of the battle, explaining aspects of void physics that most xenoscientists had never even theorized. The entities exist in a quantum superposition across multiple dimensions, he explained as they watched a particularly large Void Eater collapse under concentrated fire. "Our weapons don't destroy them. They force a dimensional collapse, trapping them in their native reality, where they can't feed on our universe," Mira concluded, understanding dawning. "You're not killing them. You're sending them home." Rivera nodded. "Precisely. But the larger ones, those that have consumed more of our reality, require exponentially more energy to collapse." A massive human vessel, identified as the Dreadnought Defiance, moved into position before the largest of the entities. Energy readings from the ship spiked to levels that Mira's instruments could barely register. "What are they doing?" Chancellor Zord demanded. "Dimensional inversion charge," Rivera explained, his voice tight with concern. "It will collapse the entity's quantum field entirely, but the process is unstable." Chen finished for him, her eyes never leaving the battle display. "The ship won't survive the discharge." The Defiance fired its primary weapon, not a beam or projectile, but a rippling distortion that seemed to invert space itself around the Void Eater. For a moment, both ship and entity were surrounded by a sphere of twisted reality, neither fully present nor absent. Then, with silent finality, both vanished. Where they had been, normal space reasserted itself, stars once again visible through undistorted vacuum. 643 crew members, Chen said quietly. They knew the cost. The sacrifice of the Defiance turned the tide of battle. The remaining Void Eaters, facing coordinated resistance from the combined fleet, began to retreat, dimensional rifts closing behind them. Hours later, as damage reports flowed in and emergency responses were coordinated, The Galactic Council reconvened in emergency session. The political landscape had shifted dramatically in the face of undeniable evidence and shared sacrifice. The Council recognizes that humanity has been fighting a war on behalf of all sentient life. Chancellor Zorg announced, "A war we did not know existed, at a cost we can scarcely comprehend." Captain Chen, now officially recognized as humanity's representative, addressed the assembly. "We did not reveal ourselves seeking gratitude or reparations. We came because the Void Eaters have evolved, adapted to our containment strategies. What you witnessed today was merely a scout force. Their main consciousness centers remain beyond the galactic rim, growing stronger with each world they consume." "What would you have us do?" asked Councillor Thar, his earlier skepticism replaced by grim acceptance. "Unite," Chen said simply. "Share technology, resources, knowledge." The ancient records that researcher Mira discovered suggest this cycle has happened before and been defeated before. Together, we can find the solution our ancestors once discovered. Mira stepped forward, displaying translations from the progenitor tablets she'd recovered. The ancients called it the Nexus Forge, a device capable of permanently sealing the dimensional boundaries the Void Eaters exploit. Components of its design have been scattered throughout the galaxy, hidden in ruins and artifacts across dozens of worlds. "A deliberate dispersion," Rivera added, "to prevent any one civilization from possessing the complete technology until it was needed, and until they were mature enough to use it wisely." The council chamber hummed with renewed purpose as species that had competed and mistrusted one another for millennia found common cause in survival. In the weeks and months that followed, a new alliance formed. Human technology and combat experience combined with the diverse scientific approaches and resources of the Confederation. Xenorchaeological expeditions, now with military escorts, recovered fragments of the ancient weapon from worlds long abandoned. Mira found herself working alongside Captain Chen and Science Officer Rivera, her expertise in ancient civilizations proving crucial to interpreting the recovered artifacts. As they pieced together the Nexus Forge, Mira gained a deeper understanding of humanity's evolution during their self-imposed exile. "Your people changed so much," she observed one evening, as they examined a particularly complex component of the ancient device. "Was it worth the isolation? The modifications?" Chen considered the question thoughtfully. "We lost things," she admitted. "Aspects of our culture, traditions that couldn't survive the single-minded focus on survival. Some would say we lost touch with what made us human in the first place. Yet you never abandoned your commitment to protecting others," Mira pointed out. "Even those who never knew you existed." "Perhaps that's the essence of humanity," Rivera suggested. "Not our biology or our history, but our stubborn refusal to let darkness win without a fight." 6 months after the Battle of Xandar Prime, the combined forces of humanity and the Galactic Confederation made their stand at the edge of the galaxy. The Nexus Forge, constructed from components gathered across 37 worlds, was positioned at the precise intersection of dimensional weak points that the Void Eaters exploited. The fleet that assembled to protect it was the largest in galactic history. Human warships with their modified crews alongside vessels from every spacefaring civilization. They faced an approaching wave of Void Eaters larger than any previously encountered, the darkness between stars flowing toward them like a tide of unreality. From the bridge of the newly commissioned Unity, a joint Human Confederation command vessel, Mira stood alongside Captain Chen as they watched the enemy approach. "If this fails," Mira said quietly, "there won't be a second chance." Chen's hand rested briefly on Mira's shoulder, a gesture of comfort that would have been unthinkable months earlier. "Then we make sure it doesn't fail." The Nexus Forge activated as the Void Eaters closed in, its ancient technology harmonizing with modern enhancements. A web of energy spread outward, reinforcing the boundaries between dimensions across a vast section of space. The entities, suddenly unable to exist partially in this reality, recoiled from the energy field. For a moment, victory seemed certain. Then the largest of the Void Eaters, a vast consciousness that had consumed countless worlds, pushed against the energy barrier. The Nexus Forge's output fluctuated, power levels dropping as the ancient device struggled against the enormous pressure. "It's failing," Rivera reported, monitoring the readings. "The primary dimensional anchor can't hold against something that size." Chen's decision was immediate. Divert power from the Unity's core. Feed it directly into the forge. "Captain, the ship's eye warned, such a power transfer will overload our containment systems. The ship will not survive. Evacuate all non-essential personnel," Chen ordered. "Volunteer crew only for the power transfer operation." Mira watched in disbelief as human crew members, not forced, not compelled, but volunteering, took their positions for what they knew was a suicide mission. "This isn't your fight," Chen told Mira, guiding her toward an evacuation shuttle. "You've done your part. The rest is on us." Mira resisted. "You've been fighting alone for centuries. Not this time." Together with a skeleton crew of humans and representatives from a dozen species, Mira remained aboard the Unity as it moved into position directly before the Nexus Forge. The ship's power core, a marvel of human engineering, was reconfigured to channel energy directly into the ancient device. As power flowed from the dying ship into the forge, the dimensional barrier strengthened. The Void Eaters, even the massive consciousness at their center, began to collapse inward, forced back into their native dimension. Systems failed throughout the Unity as the power drain reached critical levels. Radiation alarms blared, then fell silent as those systems too lost power. "It's working," Rivera reported, his voice weak as the ship's life support systems began to fail. "The dimensional boundaries are stabilizing." Through viewports clouded by failing environmental controls, they watched the darkness recede. The Void Eaters, trapped on the other side of a now impenetrable dimensional barrier, could no longer reach the galaxy they had hunted for so long. As emergency power failed and the bridge plunged into darkness, Mira felt Chen's hand find hers. "Was it worth it?" the human captain asked, echoing Mira's earlier question. "Everything we sacrificed." Looking at the stars now safe from the ancient threat, Mira answered with certainty. "Every moment." The Unity's final transmission, broadcast to the combined fleet as its systems failed, was simple: barrier stable, threat contained, remember us. And they were remembered. The sacrifice of the Unity's crew, human and alien alike, marked the beginning of a new era of cooperation. The secret history of humanity's 3-century vigil was recorded and honored across the galaxy. The modified humans, once viewed with suspicion and fear, were recognized as guardians who had given up their own evolution to protect others. 1 year later, on the anniversary of the final battle, Mira stood before a memorial on Sandar Prime. The names of every crew member who had remained aboard the Unity were inscribed in a spiral pattern that represented the galaxy they had saved. Her fingers traced the name of Captain Alessandra Chen, the human who had shown her that legends sometimes return when they're needed most. "They're asking me to write the official history," she said to Science Officer Rivera, who had survived on one of the evacuation shuttles. "The true account of humanity's exile and return." Rivera smiled, the gesture more natural than it had been a year ago, as the rigid modifications of human appearance had begun to soften with peace. "What will you tell them?" Mira looked up at the stars, now safe from the hunger between dimensions. That when darkness came for us all, humanity stood in its path, not because they had to, but because someone needed to. And in the end, they showed us how to stand together. Rivera nodded in approval. She would have liked that. As night fell over the memorial, other visitors, human and alien alike, came to pay their respects. Former enemies, now allies, former strangers, now friends, all united by the understanding that their differences mattered far less than what they shared. And in the quiet moments between stars, in the darkness that was now just darkness rather than hunger, the legacy of humanity's long vigil continued, not in isolation, but in the united front they had always hoped to build.